Where did the Grey Cardinal of the Third Reich disappear to? How did Martin Bormann become an indispensable man for the Führer? I will stay with the Führer for as long as he needs me, and then I will disappear from the political arena. Martin Bormann wrote this phrase in April of '45 in one of his last letters to his wife. And he kept his promise. The personal secretary stayed with Adolf Hitler until his very death. On April 29th, the day before the suicide, the Führer dictated his will in the Berlin underground bunker. In it, he appointed Bormann as the executor of all his property and the Reich Minister for Nazi Party Affairs, that is, the new head of the Nazi Party. Plus, he entrusted Bormann with all the arrangements regarding the destruction of his corpse. This was extremely important for Hitler. His body must not fall into the hands of the Soviets. That is why he gave this task specifically to Bormann, although of course he gave it to many others as well. But Bormann was the one who was supposed to be responsible for it. This is an indication of how important Bormann was to Hitler on that very last day. Martin Bormann was called the Grey Cardinal of the Third Reich and the Führer's right-hand man. He entered Hitler's inner circle back in 1934 after receiving the highest party rank of Reichsleiter. Bormann quickly gained the leader's trust through his servility, efficiency, and ability to flatter and please. By the beginning of World War II, Hitler considered Bormann his closest associate. The Führer trusted him completely. He even made the secretary his personal financial manager. He was responsible for Hitler's entire lifestyle, all of Hitler's residences, providing Hitler with everything he needed, the gifts that Hitler gave, where Eva Braun lived, what purchases Eva Braun made, how she spent her money. He controlled all of Hitler's finances. Plus, Bormann made all the reports to Hitler. That is, he prepared all the field situation reports for him, and Hitler made decisions based on them. Plus, Bormann controlled who got to see Hitler. Hitler decided everything in Germany, and Bormann controlled Hitler. After the death of the Nazi leader, Bormann mysteriously disappeared. They did not find him in the Führer's Berlin bunker. A version emerged that the Reich's Grey Cardinal fled to Hitler's residence, the Berghof, in the Bavarian Alps. But Bormann was not found there either. After Hitler's death, untold riches fell into the hands of Martin Bormann. After all, as the financial manager of the Reich Chancellor, he had access to all the NSDAP's bank accounts. Moreover, Bormann, on the Führer's orders, hid the Reich's looted gold in mines and secret caches. Plus, there were these priceless, countless, invaluable trophies of Nazi Germany taken from the conquered countries, be it the Louvre, Tsarskoye Selo, or the Vienna royal castles. Even Bormann's personal savings would have been enough for him to disappear without a trace from Germany and live comfortably abroad until the end of his days, especially since few people knew his face abroad. Despite his influence and high status, the Reich's Grey Cardinal was an absolutely non-public figure. He always stayed in the shadow of Adolf Hitler. Bormann had to constantly be with Hitler to maintain his influence. Therefore, he practically had no time for the very public activities that take up a lot of time. That's why, when we see Bormann in the chronicles, we always see him when Hitler is digging something or opening something. And there he is, right next to him, handing him a shovel. That is, he was always right next to Hitler. He did not act as an independent figure. The last time Hitler's personal secretary was seen alive was on the night of May 2nd, 1945, near the Friedrichstrasse train station in Berlin. Apparently, he was trying to flee the city. After that, the trail of the Nazi criminal was lost. There were many rumors surrounding his disappearance, including the most incredible ones. The first head of the Federal Republic of Germany's Foreign Intelligence Service, Reinhard Gehlen, claimed that Martin Bormann was actually a Soviet spy under the pseudonym Werther. However, according to historians, this version does not stand up to any criticism. If Bormann were a Soviet agent, well, he would have shot Adolf Hitler earlier, and that's it. Organizing the death of Adolf Hitler was no problem for Bormann at all. He was the man who controlled everything there. Hitler's health was so bad that it would have literally taken just one injection, and that would have been it. He would have simply gotten rid of Hitler. And yet, The version of Bormann's cooperation with Soviet intelligence after the war was actively promoted by the Western media. It was Werther who became one of the prototypes for the illegal intelligence officer Max Otto von Stierlitz, the famous hero of the works of writer Julian Semenoff. But there is no evidence of Martin Bormann's connection with the Soviet secret services. Moreover, this version does not fit at all with the fact that Hitler's personal secretary was a convinced Nazi. What kind of intelligence officer, who was really such a seasoned, absolutely unconditional Russophobe, a supporter of the Aryan theory, could have had any common cause with Soviet foreign intelligence? 2 months after the end of the war, Arthur Axmann, the former leader of the Nazi youth organization Hitler Youth, was arrested in Bavaria. During the interrogation, he stated that on May 2, 1945, Martin Bormann was killed during a shelling while trying to leave Berlin. Axmann even indicated the exact location where he saw the body of the Reich minister, but no corpse was found there. The thought that Bormann might have survived long troubled the Nazi hunters. Many were sure he fled to Latin America. A made-up story was spun that he became Juan Keller there and had an illegitimate daughter who eventually lost her father. And so he lived for 15 years until the early 60s in the Latin American underground. Then the Latin American story was forgotten because no one could ever prove anything. In the USSR, another version was popular that Martin Bormann surrendered to the Allies after the war and, in exchange for the Reich's gold, received asylum in one of the capitalist countries. According to some historians, Hitler's personal secretary was indeed preparing to flee to the West. If, for example, the same Joseph Goebbels, along with Magda, committed suicide and also killed their 6 children, then Martin Bormann, 2 months in advance, took all his children and his wife to the West. And not only that, he also sent them a truckload of food. There were about 10 kilograms of butter alone. Naturally, all his family ended up in the Western occupation zone. There were no such problems. Everything was taken care of in advance. But Martin Bormann himself never managed to escape. In 1972, during excavation work near the Werther train station in Berlin, the remains of 2 men were found. One was identified immediately. It turned out to be Hitler's personal doctor, Ludwig Stumpfegger. The second was presumably Martin Bormann, but this could only be confirmed 26 years later thanks to a DNA test. Blood for the analysis was taken from Bormann's cousin's niece. Experts concluded Hitler's secretary received a severe wound, but death occurred as a result of poisoning. He was wounded by a shell fragment. He realized that he could not go on, and Bormann did not want to fall into the hands of the Soviet Union, so he committed suicide. They all had vials. Hitler had given them to everyone. Martin Bormann hoped until the very end to escape from Berlin, surrounded by Soviet troops, by plane. This is evidenced by the recently released FSB testimony of the Führer's personal pilot, Hans Bauer. According to the pilot, on May 1, 1945, the day after Hitler's suicide, everyone who was with him in the bunker broke up into groups and quietly left the shelter. However, no one managed to get out of the city,